you got to hit the button. Is kind of how it works. Let's see. There's a song, one of my favorite songs ever. Push the Button. Have you ever heard that one?
By Too Short?
No, not Too Short.
Oh. No.
There you go.
Pushing the button. We can talk about it later.
No, not Too. All right.
Because we got a lot to talk about.
We got lots to talk about.
Actually, I'm not sure. I'm kind of afraid that we won't have enough content for half an hour, but it's fine. It's important.
Talk about other things too.
Super important. Super duper.
Super important.
Yeah. Like definitive jujitsu, essential jujitsu.
Essential?
Essential.
Essential jujitsu. That's
Ways to approach jujitsu when you don't have any other ideas. Alright, I'll start talking. So,
teach us.
One thing, or the thing that we've been going over this week, the theme is tightness, right? And last time we talked about how by bringing our elbows close to our body, we can help stay connected and tight to our person, right? And that was applicable for things like Kimura grips, gable grips, etc., etc. The one thing that I wanted to get into was another kind of attachment method that I like, which is going to be this armpit grip, right? When I was coming up in jiu-jitsu, people used to always tell me to think of the body as a like rock climbing wall where you're looking for like nooks and crannies to be able to grab and attach. I'm not going to go into your crannies, don't worry. But we're looking for nooks and crannies to, climb a person, right? So one of the ones that I like the most is going to be this armpit grip, right? This allows us to control the rotation of the body here, right? Particularly in side control. Can I do side control? Right, so when I'm in side control, if I get the opportunity, I actually like to hook on the inside of the armpit here. Right, what this does is this allows me to kind of anchor myself to my partner, and if he tries to turn towards me, right, I can use this to either slow him down or stop him entirely, depending on the situation. Right, so when I'm in control, in the side control here, right, sometimes it's good to apply pressure here, but sometimes we need to back off, right? But I still want to maintain my connection here in case he starts using this opportunity to escape, right? If he moves, he's going to have to carry me with him to some degree, right? So I like to look for these sorts of armpit grips here in north-south, or if we're like a little deeper into side control, this is really nice to hook in here, like under the head here is really reliable. All right, so not only are we have this shoulder in place for this 100 kilos, and I'm keeping him from wanting to turn into me, but my grip on his armpit is pulling his shoulder down. So not only will he have to pull, push his face through my shoulder, but he'd have to break this grip as well. So this helps really solidify my ability to keep him from turning into me. Right? This grip also comes up a lot in guard, specifically closed guard. Right, where if we can come across the body here, a way to keep myself attached to my partner can be this armpit grip here, right? Where once I make this connection, I can pull my elbow in tight and really use this to anchor myself onto his posture so that he can't just, straighten his back and start working to pass here, right? So this goes along with the concept that we were talking about, like reaching for things, right? Making the connection and then pulling everything tight and in where you're going to be really strong here.
So look over at that, at your elbow, right? Like this elbow comes down. It's not just like randomly holding and pulling. You're actually bringing your elbow to your hip.
Yeah, it can't be relaxed here. It's not going to be useful if I'm relaxed. Yeah, exactly. Right, I'll be able to make space. Right, so I want to, right, whenever I make this connection with my hand, I'm pulling my elbow, just like Rich said, down into my hip as much as possible. Right, not only will I eliminate the space and opportunity for him to swim in and start disrupting that grip, but I'm going to be inherently stronger just by having my elbows close to my body here. Right, so this is really useful, right? If I just need to hang on and keep him from moving around or keep him broken down so that he can't start executing a stack pass. And usually from here, or any sort of pass really. But from here, now I can start transitioning this stuff. Where
cross, actually, yeah, cross side. Like put your, like you do this way too. I like whichever, like sometimes you clear the elbow, but even if you don't clear the elbow, I like to come here, right? And so I like this one a lot. It does prevent the person, like you were saying, like from coming back in. So I think you had, what did you have? You had this one, right?
I had head scooped.
You had the head scoop in this, which I really like too. This is like when you don't have a gi to like a Bravo grip here. Like sometimes you see people pull a Bravo grip.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have a Bravo, and the same thing with what you were just doing actually. So it's like almost like a substitute for the Bravo, where you know bring the gi all the way across. And you have that kind of anchor on the far. It's because you have your arm in here, your hand in the armpit. It's almost the same type of grip. This one is also has the added benefit of having a little bit of a neck cranky type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes you'll get this and you can actually bring across, right? And you can switch off to like a paper cutter, which I like to do. Or, you know, this one, same idea. It's like you're not gonna turn into me. It's gonna be really hard. So you're gonna come across, right? Or not go across, but you're gonna
Force
go
them to
away,
away.
right? Because this is really difficult.
Yeah.
And I like this, like if you get here, right, like these, and I remember people used to do this, where you come in, and then this is a great pre-position for the reverse triangle, right? So here, and then you're already beating that arm. So it's a nice way to control your training partner, at the same time set up some, and you can have some cranks, right? Like if you go back for a sec, if you can beat that arm, like if you have this arm in, and this arm out, right? You must have like a neck crank thing if you want, right? Or you can start coming in across. Yeah, there's all sorts of things. Start pulling. Yeah, that's nasty. All sorts of like not nice things to do to somebody. I use this sometimes to set up that paper cutter, or just to control the person and annoy them. Yeah. So yeah, this is I mean, if you have this and this, like I'm not going anywhere. Because there's so much control. You can
That's nasty.
So that, you know, like if you're here, you can even sit me up. Yeah. It's a really nice kind of control. I'm not sure if you can do this from the guard. So if I'm here, I'm not sure that gets you anywhere. Probably not. You can get like this. I mean, if you have your elbow splayed, it's going to be great. I don't know if this gets you that grab. I mean, I like what you were doing, which was here.
I usually use that one to set up like
Pendulum sweeps. Yeah, pendulum sweeps are super powerful.
Can I try that one?
Yeah, so it's not just like we're going to hold on for dear
So
life.
you're talking about coming under
Yes.
here. Isn't this like the setup for all the weird, like, tenth planet triangle-y stuff?
I don't know, but if I take my head out, I'm going to leave something very valuable behind here. You know, it's one of those things where, you know, you're here, and this is not, this is all bad. All bad. Yeah, now you like it.
Or I saw this
Yeah.
from someone.
I
Slow.
think it's hard, you know, because here the person's going to be defending, right? Like I wouldn't. Yeah, you got to be careful with that side too.
If I can get this. Like get under your chin.
Oh, that's no good.
That is different. But I like this because, I mean, the function shifts from rotational control, I think, but now I have like a frame where I can kind of push you away and start working to get my legs across, which I think is difficult to do when you're on bottom, like do all this fancy stuff.
This is
with your
really
legs.
good for when people are like kind of planted and they don't want to leave your guard, you know? Because if I'm having, like usually, you know, my personal, like if I'm actually trying to pass the guard, is I'm going to be here and I'm going to be trying to keep my posture. I don't want you to have my head, right? So like closing that distance, you're going to have to break me down, but like I'm going to pummel in the whole time. I'm not going to like, yeah. So this is really good if the person's here and they're just trying to stall out in here and you need to work. That's all that is bad.
All terrible.
But I think it's good because you're saying like when you talk about attachment, when you talk about like really creating a connection with your training partner, that's not just like grabbing. What's cool about like this kind of positioning here is that you're pulling on this arm, right? And that means that like I feel a powerful incentive to not let you take me that way, right? So when you come in and you start pulling from either this one or the first one you were doing, right? Like I feel very much like you're gonna take me to your left. You know what I mean? So I might put my hand down, which would be foolish, but if I don't, here, now I'm in big trouble, right? So you kind of like, there's a lot of options that you have. And one of the easiest things that I can do, which is not good, is pop my head out. You know? Yeah, now there's like so many other things you can do to me.
Probably the over-the-shoulder bump sweep. That's a good one.
Also, yeah. So, you know, when you're here, just getting this little thing here is, and your hips come out, I'm gonna have to come back into you. Yeah. So many things come out.
One thing I was thinking, like what's nice about these grips is, like if you stay hunkered down, like I don't really have to apply any force, but if you start to lift up, then I can just start tensing up and making sure that you're carrying my weight. So like here I can, you know, I don't just have to squeeze and hold you, right? If you're down, right? So once I kind of get a feel that you've given up here, then I can start doing things to work to attack. But as soon as you decide you want to start posturing up, then I can really focus on keeping you broken down. Then once you give up there, I can start working into other things. I was thinking, but yeah, for the pendulum sweep, usually I like to have this elbow across here. This is really comfortable for me. And then I can either start.
Yeah, that's good. I like that going back. And what the person's gonna have to like start like here.
That's fine.
I think it's a good like you know, for people who maybe are starting, it doesn't matter the level, maybe people who are very high level already know this, you know, intuitively or otherwise, but you know, I see a lot of people who are flailing, you know, and you know, I see a lot of people who just want to grab the head, right? So if we're here from any position and all I'm doing is like pull and like just trying to like collar tie, not to say collar tie is a bad thing, but if all I'm doing is collar tying the whole time, this isn't the greatest connection, right? Or they just sometimes like, speaking of 10th planet, I remember, I'm not sure if this is still sort of 10th planet doctrine, but like, you just want to come up and grab here and hold down, right? But once I have this, like I need to start doing something else. And I see a lot of people just hold, right? They're just gonna hold on to you for the whole time, as opposed to starting to like advance the position in a way that's like a really subtle way to advance your position that doesn't look like it's that much of an improvement. But I think it really is. It's, you know, if someone's just trying to collar tie me the whole time, it's kind of easy to just take those grips off.
Yeah.
But when they get the collar tie and then for a second, then they move to this other kind of intermediate position, which doesn't seem like it's that much of an upgrade over what you had before. But that is a lot harder to break that grip or that tie than it's like a Bravo, right? Like you can break grips when they're like kind of in front of you. But when the grips go behind you, it becomes very difficult. And that's true standing. I'll bet you there's some good uses for this in terms of controls from standing position if you can get over that back, you know, and get into the armpit. So it's just pretty useful gripping strategy.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool. Definitely not something that you see discussed a whole lot. I'm not even sure, I mean, you don't know about the Bravos, but with Noki, I don't see a lot of people using these. Because, you know, that is, you know, from a rules perspective, you know, if you go to IBJJF and you start doing that, that kind of neck crank thing across, they're probably going to warn you / disqualify you. So it wouldn't be something that I would recommend doing in a tournament unless you go very quickly into like a paper cutter. And even then, you might get a warning and a stoppage.
But with the armpit grip, it should be.
No, the one that's under, like getting under is fine. But when you go that way across, like around the neck, or doing that with the neck, well, but you know the thing is, and I'll say this, is that the other version of this, which is kind of like the same thing, is the power half. You know, and you see that happen all the time. No one ever has a problem with the power half.
I think as long as you give them opportunity to rotate, right? Like as long as you're not holding down their body.
Well, when you're on top, and let's say you have like a turtle position, right? Or the person is up on a leg, right? Like the person's on the leg, and you get into these power. You know, this isn't a power half, but kind of this quarter Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's legal, and I can sit here and I've seen people just like push the face into the mat.
Yeah.
You know, or if we're on the back, let me go to this side. Like this is one where you're here and you just do this. This is essentially the same thing. I mean, I'm not hooking onto your armpit anymore, but you know, doing this power half.
I like do you ever do the 100% here?
What's the 100%?
Where you go over the head and under the armpit with your right arm.
I go over the head.
So yeah.
What is this?
And then you like pull this.
Oh. Yeah, this is like this is kind of like the crossbody ride, right? That's what you do.
I'm thinking here, where.
Oh, from the guard? Well, yeah, you wouldn't do that in the crossbody ride, but no, that's another, I think, example like that. We haven't really done a lot of power half stuff. I think the power half is if you can't do a crank, you might as well do a power half.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't see that enough. It's like one of those kind of traditional wrestling. Gordon Ryan does it all day long, and his back control, one of the best in the business. You know, power halves. Look into it, kids.
Yeah, it definitely solves problems.
And it's also really good for setting up your guillotines.
Yeah.
And then controlling, like you're saying, like from here, you know, like if I'm in this position and I have this power half, like this really changes things up.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to break this grip, and you're not going to turn into me very easily. Even if you have like sometimes it'll be on the leg, like you'll be here, right, and you get that power half, you know, or here, you know, you can come in here like these. You can actually use this little grip here. Because power half is kind of like a little awkward.
Yeah.
But this is, you know,
grabbing my
just
arm.
grabbing your arm.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of interesting, you know.
Squeezy.
Any kind of thing you can, any port in a storm. Well, I didn't make that up. So
Yeah.
here,
Okay.
yeah. I like that. But you can do it with just this arm. That's no deal. This really causes a
Oh
little
wait, so
problems.
you were.
You can just go
here.
here, yes, and then push down with your elbow. Yeah. You know, so even if I have your leg, I'm on your leg, and start coming up, yeah, so you're just gonna crush me down. I can't, and now you're into your favorite position.
I like that one.
So,
I had an idea.
all right.
I do this from mount a lot. Where either I'll be under here and
Same thing.
controlling, and this lets me smash my shoulder harder than normal. Or yeah, if I can come under here,
Yep.
people are being. This is where we go into our, what's it called? It was this is a name, what is it?
Gogoplata?
Monoplata.
Monoplata.
Yeah.
Gogoplata.
And then the old Cambodian clamshell.
Yeah. I really like that that armpit control and bringing your body or your elbow tight.
Yeah.
That-
I want to do that again to re-emphasize. Like this is probably the best one out of all of them. In terms of
Side
what it
control,
gets
this
you.
is super useful. It's the same idea as side control.
Same idea, but like as far as strategies to get a win in mount, this is my favorite one, right? Because I can hold on to this. Like you're not going to be able to bridge anywhere where I'm not going to be able to hang on.
Yeah, because I can only bridge that way, really, at best. I can't turn back the other way.
Yeah, and I have a free arm, and I'm like making your life a living hell. And I can start opening this up here,
man.
and then I can open this up here, or I can start like attacking the arm directly, or I usually would try and come underneath for this Americana, or come underneath here. But yeah, this is crazy.
Yeah, you gotta keep your elbows tight in here. This is another, I gotta hold on here. I can't let you, even if you get underneath my armpit, get up underneath my armpit, no, with this, right? If you're here, like I have to keep this here.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, it's gonna be hard enough. This is, basically this is survival mode. I got a hand fence and you're pummel. Yes. But yeah, it's just basically pure, almost purely defensive in there.
Yeah.
This is something that was very prevalent at Henzo's. Something that Henzo did a lot.
Yeah.
And,
I think
it's not fun.
it does a lot because like it allows you to really control the direction of where the person on bottom is going. Right? If you don't smash their face to one side, they can decide whichever way they want to escape.
It's essentially a scoop guard. If you think about it, this is like,
Like a cross face almost, but like super deep.
Yeah.
Just like, and so like if we know their head can only turn to one direction, we know they can only escape in one direction, and that eliminates half the variables of the problem.
Yep.
So super useful. And if they start escaping really well on the side that they're going, like scoop their head and point their head the other direction, and now they have to start all over again.
Yeah. I was thinking, like I was actually thinking about this the other day. If you lay down for a second, go the other way for me for a second. Yeah. So when you get the person maybe kind of on their side a little bit, right? And you want to get this, right? They're already, on this. Like it's hard to get in here because their arms might be defending, right? So I like to come here and then hold, right? So I get that little wrist grip, and then you go into the armpit here. And so usually they'll flare, right? You'll be here, I'll go there, right? And then I'll start doing this stuff, and then that opens that up.
It's mean.
Right? So it's like a little bit of hand fighting in here. I really like when you guys do, so the traditional way to do this is to kind of do this, which is, there's nothing wrong with this, obviously, great. But if you want to get to that armpit, I really like holding you. Now, so you can't hold fingers, I can't just grab his pinky, okay? So you can grab all four.
All four.
Right? Or you can just do this one where you're not really grabbing, you're just grabbing. But look at where I'm grabbing, guys. So it's like above his knuckle here, this pinky knuckle. So if you grab in here, it makes it really hard for him, to like to sort of power out because he's kind of wrist locking himself. So I like that. So if we're here, I go 1, 2, pass it off, pop that in there.
Feels like you're heel hooking my arm.
Well, whatever. Right? And there's ones where people come like all the way back, right? So I think that's kind of fun too. You're here and you bring it back.
Thank you.
Right? Anyway, this is another way, right? You can think about talking about wrist locks, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who, now wrist locks are becoming cool again, right? But this is a wrist lock right here where you can, and the nice thing about this wrist lock is instead of, you don't have to pull, although if you want to, you might be able to pull, but you can also just drive that way, so that's like that wrist lock as opposed to this one, which I think is really hard to get this.
Yeah.
This is a really difficult one. The other one is a little bit easier. So there's lots of those little hand fights and controls. It's not just one thing. Like don't fixate on just getting to the armpit because you have other opportunities in there. And don't just think about like, oh, I'm going to get the armpit and therefore I'm just going to stay in here. And then you can use it as a control, but you can also use it to get into a lot of really nice mounts and submissions. Get to the back. It really makes me think. When I have to worry about my wrists and my neck and everything else, it makes everything else open up. Like when you have this, I have to defend.
Yeah.
I can't just ignore it, and so I'll give you the back.
Yeah. So not get submitted.
So that I'm not getting, so you're not even on my hands anymore. Because if we're just sitting there and you're just like on my wrists, I'm gonna move.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit there unless some guys have like forearms like
But like,
Popeye.
do you really want to be that guy?
Well, this is so in training, maybe you don't want to be in that guy, but in competition, like, hey, look, this is why I ignore 2% of the human. Like I agree.
It's valid, right?
You look. I mean, it's not about whether you're cranking on a wrist lock. You know, it's more about, to me, it's
The
like, can I
opportunity.
use it to make you open up, especially for guys that are super tight.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, I mean, if they're super tight and you can't get underneath their armpits or underneath their arms or elbows,
Start at the weakest part.
you gotta, I mean, the hands and wrists are gonna be usually, you know,
Yeah.
a pretty weak link in the chain. So, you know, use that if you have. I mean, look, I have to make a decision for defensive perspective of like, I can either try to move and be dynamic, or I can just kind of hunker down and try to be tight as as possible.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that I can't complain as a competitor or a training partner if you start chipping away at the weak links in my armor. You know.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, prying my elbows out. Okay, maybe you could do that, but you know, I've chosen my adventure.
How about this? Just don't be the guy who just on wrist locks
Yeah.
like the Hudsons.
Yeah. I mean, it's
It's rude.
I mean,
We can agree that it's rude.
You know, I think it goes back to the idea of, two ideas, right? There's the golden rule, which is don't do anything to anybody else that you wouldn't.
But what if you're a psychopath?
Well, even if you're a psychopath, it is still in your interest. Psychopaths are still rational, right? I would say, yes. They're not crazy.
You can't assume that people are acting rationally, but
Well, like a psychopath to me is somebody who is just like doesn't have empathy for
Yeah.
other people, but they act in their own rational self-interest.
But if it's the rules that you have to tap, and it just so happens that like this technique will break your wrist before you're able to tap, and I'm following the rules, I can use
Yes.
the rules to justify.
So, the downside of that is like, yes, you are following the rules, and that is allowed. That's within the rules, but you won't have training partners anymore because all your partners will have broken wrists and they can't train.
yeah,
And then nobody will train with you anymore.
but that's a long process, you know, and there's a lot of time in between
Yes.
each wrist breaking, and people forget.
I mean, I think just people will not like you. I don't have anything against wrist lockers as a general rule. Like it's like you should be able to defend yourself, and it should not come as a surprise if someone tries to wrist lock you.
Yeah, but the whole point of doing jujitsu is that you get an opportunity to protect yourself.
Yes,
You
I
know,
agree.
and the
And
whole
training,
tapping
yes.
system. I don't want to work with someone who's going to break my wrist without.
That is
giving
true.
me an
I mean,
option.
this is what I'm saying is like if you do this to too many people or one person too hard, or you're not in control of yourself, then people are not gonna like you anymore.
But that's the thing, even with control.
But this was the same stuff that people were saying about heel hooks
Yeah.
not so long ago. Of like, well, you're gonna injure people and out of no fault of their own and just out of ignorance. Well, educate yourself. You should be aware, and then maybe this goes back to like what we teach in schools. So you should be aware of the dangers.
Yeah.
Just like neck cranks. And neck cranks is another thing where I think we do students a disservice by not teaching them.
I teach my cranks all the time.
Because they are incredibly effective and very common amongst
Yeah.
other grapplers. And so if you don't know, and we have lots of neck cranks in jiu-jitsu that are totally legal, but we just kind of choose to ignore.
Yeah.
Like the actual, like a guillotine can be half of guillotines are just nasty neck cranks.
Oh yeah. I don't
I
know
very
that.
rarely tap to a guillotine because I felt like I was gonna pass out.
Yeah, it just has to look like a choke.
Right, so it's hypocritical to me to say like,
But it's also-
neck cranks are illegal. Like teach all those neck cranks. Like you should know. Like
Neck
when you're
cranks
in danger.
that don't look like chokes are illegal. Neck cranks are not illegal. But
Okay. No, but if you look at the rules, they say neck cranks are illegal.
yeah, but a neck crank
It's
that
just a
looks like a
crank.
choke is
No, but that's because it's a
perfectly-
choke that just happens to have a crank element to it.
How do you define choke? Like does
Anything
someone
that
have to do-
obstructs your ability to pass oxygen up to your brain.
Yeah, but if I'm guillotining you, and
Because you're also not
if
supposed
it's
to be able to
just
attack
neck crank-
the throat.
Yeah, but they can't see that. So if I'm guillotining,
This is why I'm saying it's hypocritical, and another way that IBJJF rules make no sense.
I just think the attitude of the entire culture regarding like the approach to heel hooks is different than wrist locks, right? Because you're probably more likely to go ham on a wrist lock on me than you are to go ham on a heel hook.
I go
because
ham on
you-
everything.
Yeah, but I mean, comparatively speaking,
Well, the
because
thing-
a wrist lock isn't going to destroy my life as much, right?
Oh,
It might.
I don't
I'm
know
not
about
saying
that.
I'm not saying
I
it
don't know
shouldn't be
about that.
respected, but compared to a heel hook and the maximum damage possible
Well-
and how it could change your life, more people are more willing to go kind of crazy on wrist locks to get the submission.
I am not telling people to go crazy on wrist locks. I'm just saying be aware of their
Well, I'm just saying
use.
they do.
And the thing is that you don't have to crank on a wrist lock to get things to where you want them to be.
Disagree. I think it's like the Estima lock. You know, like
Oh yeah.
if
No,
you want this wrist lock to be the thing that submits them, then it's
Oh, if
probably
it's a
gonna have to
submission, I'm saying to open things up, to make them react and move,
You're
and
right.
open up. You
You're
know,
right.
like you don't have to crank on it. You can just kind of pull on it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. You know, there are these submissions. There are techniques all throughout jiu-jitsu, if you look, that are potentially, well, or highly hazardous, even when they're properly applied,
Yeah.
because they come on so quickly. You know, it's you know, Braulio he teaches a lot of the Estima locks, and I was watching a lot of these videos a while ago, and he would hurt his training partner. He would like but his uke
Yeah.
in the demo.
That's what I'm saying.
You know, and
That's
he would
not a good
laugh,
thing.
you know. So, but yeah,
That's not a good thing.
not a good thing at all. So that's, you know, highly dangerous. And you know, the guy who Johnny Tama has an instructional out on, because he does the tomahawk, which is a modified
The
steam-
tomahawk?
Well, that'd be a better name, but it's the tomahawk.
Tomahawk.
And but he shows ways to kind of drill without injuring your partner.
Yeah.
And I think John does that too for heel hooks. You know, here's how you practice the mechanics without, you know, blowing out your partner's knees, because you won't have any partners anymore.
Yeah.
And you might have a few lawsuits. So anyway, use the wrist locks with caution.
Tap. Always assume someone's gonna break your shit off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, the thing is too, is that people come after sometimes, like the times that I've wrist locked people hard is when they are being unreasonable in their application
That's
of
so
force to me.
subjective. What do you mean they're being unreasonable?
I sort of subjectively determine that they are being
So
unreasonable.
like retributive wrist locking?
No, it's not retributive. It is.
Is that the word? That's the
It
word?
is retributive. Is a good word. It is. I am. What's the word?
Matching the pace. That
What's the word I'm trying to use? It's like commensurate. I'm using the same level. So if you're gonna go crazy on me, right?
You get wrist locks.
You might get wrist locked, right? Because they're moving so fast. They're using so much force that if I feel like I can't like control them like that way,
Just hold on to
if I have a wrist lock available to me, I may wrist lock you. But
My
you
old
know how it
instructor
is.
used to call it opening up Pandora's box. Like if you
If you
want,
wrist lock,
either a wrist lock or any sort of like if you touch his legs, like
that's
he's gonna go
That's
for it.
an old.
It's hanger.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was just like his thing. He would touch your legs until like you touched his, and as soon as you did, like he wasn't gonna stop until he got you in some sort of.
It reminds me of
leg submission.
so when I first started martial arts, I did Taekwondo, and we used to spar all the time, but there were certain unwritten rules about where you could and couldn't hit. And so one of the rules in Taekwondo, at least when I was training, was like you couldn't kick people in the legs, or at least not in the knee area. So basically, you know, anything from like here down was like if you kick. It was in Thai boxing, right? So in Thai, you know, you kick some people like 1,000 times, or you like shrug or
Yeah.
whatever. In Taekwondo, it was like they wouldn't. It was like throwing down the gauntlet. It was like what a heel hook or a foot lock would be
They wouldn't
5 years ago in
teach
jiu-jitsu.
how
It
to
was
take
like,
it. They wouldn't teach how to not get your leg destroyed when getting kicked.
not really, because it just wasn't like it's illegal. My understanding is in Taekwondo competition, high level competition, you're allowed to kick the
Like,
legs.
waist it up.
Yeah, there's like, so yeah, whatever. I think of it the same way though, which is, kicking the legs is super effective.
It's great.
It's much safer than trying to kick somebody in the head.
It's like my feet are down there, their legs are down there.
I mean, and I can do a lot of damage if I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So same thing with heel hooks and wrist locks and neck cranks. You should know what they are. You should,
Everything
yeah.
has a place.
Hmm?
Everything has a place.
I mean, even if you're just thinking of it from a safety perspective, or you know, defensive perspective, like how do I deal with this stuff? Like you still need to know and should know as a grappler,
Yeah.
right? Like you should know what is there and what it can do to you and what you can use it for to do to other people if you needed to do it.
Yeah.
So
I would say one last thing for me. the wrist is very complicated. The hand has a lot of really small bones, and maybe a thing doesn't hurt, but if you break something, it could cause more crazy damage than you could anticipate. Like, that could be like a lifetime of pain. So be careful, because hand and wrist stuff is like super complicated. There are a lot of little moving parts, right? Delicate instruments. My old instructor used to say hands aren't for punching.
That's
right?
true.
It's like taking a microscope and beating someone over the head with it.
I mean, that's effective.
I mean, it works.
Microscopes are really heavy.
But you're gonna mess up the microscope.
Yeah, you're probably not gonna be able to use that for your.
So if you ever have to hit people, it's more.
I think that's good advice.
Some of these do.
I mean, why do boxers wear gloves and why do they tape their hands? It's to protect their hands.
Yeah.
Really, it's not protecting you to pack my hands with tape. Anyway, good advice. You should be. You know, the other thing when we're on the wrist lock is not putting your hands on to check somebody's hips. That's a really, really bad idea. This, when someone's here, I had a friend of mine who got his wrist broken in a training with somebody who turned his hips super hard. So, it's one of those things where, maybe it's half guard and you're trying to come around and you're tempted to push here. And then if the person, move your hand, switches the hips really hard, if your hand gets caught in there, it's going to get
crazy.
blown out.
Don't do that.
I usually use like here.
I use this.
Yeah, so if you're going to block, you're not using the wrist.
Yeah.
So even if the person, turns their hips, it's, there's no little fingers caught.
I use my hand to follow the hip, but then when it starts to turn, my hand gets out of the way, and then my elbow.
I have a better frame here. Yeah, I'm not gonna hip switch through your. I'm not.
People do that from side control too, and it usually happens to everyone once, and then they stop.
Some people they will wait for you to do that, and they will turn their hips fast on it.
That's rude.
I'm just saying, there's, especially in my experience, it's people who, if you're going with a stronger guy, right, you're maybe a little bit smaller, or you're going with a more experienced person.
It's one thing to do it and to get the hand off your hip and to transition, but to purposefully try and mess someone's wrist up.
I don't think they're doing it
bad
to
too.
mess the wrist up. I think what they see or they feel is there's a weakness there, and they exploit that weakness as hard as they can, and you're going to hurt your partner.
Yeah. I've cut.
But it's not like, so this always gets back to like who's the more experienced grappler.
Yeah.
Right? If I put my hand on your hip when we're doing this and you turn your hip on me, I can't complain. I'm an experienced person, you're an experienced person, I should know better. But if I'm going with a white belt and I'm passing their guard and they're doing this, I should not turn my hip on them. Because, or at least I should stop and tell them, don't do that.
You should be aware that turning your hip on them could hurt their.
I should not do it.
And I do.
Unless we're having like
But even then, your intention should never be to purposefully hurt your training partner.
Or my students. I think it's even a higher standard for students, but for your students.
Yeah.
But in terms of your training partner, you should never. I would never do anything that is intentionally going or has a high likelihood of hurting you. I wouldn't do kani basami to somebody who had never seen it, didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Or even worse, somebody who maybe has a judo background and is like thinking like that's totally illegal. I wouldn't do it to a wrestler. I wouldn't do it to a judo player. Because it's actually going to be something that they are probably even more likely to get hurt with because of the way they move. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So because they come up through their training thinking this stuff they're never going to see it, and so they don't really account for it, which I think is detrimental in a way. But that's you just got to deal with the reality.
Everyone should hopefully have the same expectations with what everyone else is.
Don't hurt your partners.
Yeah, be on the same page with what's allowed and what's not allowed.
Yeah.
Very
And
important.
when in doubt, ask.
Yeah. But at the same time, I shouldn't go and try and break people's wrists, but if it happens, it's not my fault, I think.
Well, if they're like I said, right? Like if you're dealing with an experienced person who should know better, not your fault.
Yeah.
If it's a brand new person, and if you're doing the the first day demo or then maybe not. You know what I mean? Anyway, anything else? All right, take care of your partners.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.